Alright, I want to take a bit of time to talk about the video I uploaded yesterday with the bow and crossbow tests. Now, this was really intended as a trial run, a test, if you will, because I wasn't quite sure exactly how to set up everything, target materials, and I wasn't sure how that area would work out. And it was the first attempt at trying out the new crossbow I got, and all of that. I could have done that off camera, of course, but it was an almost 3-hour trip to get to and from, and it took pretty much the entire day to set up and do the tests and all that. So I figured I might as well make a video out of that and upload it. It's not intended to be scientific by any means, but it was definitely helpful to get an idea of the differences between the different bows and crossbows. And there was some really good constructive feedback, which I always appreciate. A lot of people have said that there just wasn't enough gel, and I totally agree with that. I didn't have as much left as I thought. So what I'm using is Clear Ballistics synthetic gel, which I can remelt and reuse, which makes it a lot more affordable overall, even though the stuff itself is very expensive to buy first time. And I got a torso mold, and I figured, I might be able to fill it halfway or so with the amount of gel I had, but not even close. So that really wasn't a whole lot. That's why I put the styrofoam block behind that. Now, it's not very consistent because the thickness varies, and depending on how thin the gel is at the spot, the bolt or arrow would penetrate more of the styrofoam rather than the gel. So it's not ideal, really. It still gave us a rough idea of the differences, and it certainly drove home the point of just how powerful modern crossbows are. That was very noticeable. About the conclusion at the end, I simplified a little too much, because I said essentially with the difference between the bows that it comes down to draw weight, but that's not all of it. In fact, it depends a whole lot on how the limbs move. For example, the PVC bow didn't perform terribly well despite it having a higher draw weight, but the limbs just don't flex as nicely as on the recurve bow, for example, which is only 35 pounds, but it just does a lot better. And depending on how fast the limbs flex, you can generate more velocity, because the draw only tells you, how much effort you have to put into it to store energy, but how well the energy is transferred into the arrow, that's still another matter. And a compound bow is highly efficient in that regard. So there's definitely some differences there. Also between the two crossbows, it's not just the draw length and the draw weight, it's also how the limbs operate. So what I really need to do in order to redo this test better is get a chronograph. And by the way, if anybody has a chronograph that they're not using that you would consider selling or donating for the video, please let me know. So I need to get one of those, because the velocity of the arrow is really more important. So I'd have to weigh every arrow and bolt and get the velocity. So then if I know the mass and velocity, I can calculate the kinetic energy, which is better for comparison. And of course, the shape of the point is also going to be important, all of that. And yes, I'll need a lot more gel. So I need to buy quite a bit more of that. I'll try to do it with Amazon store credit if I can get enough together, because they do have Clear Ballistics gel at Amazon. If you want to help out with that, I'll leave an affiliate link to Amazon in the video description. If you intended to order at Amazon anyway, you can go through that link, and on your end, nothing would change, but it would generate some store credit from me so I can order that gel. Normally that wouldn't be an issue, but lately the budget has been rather tight due to a drop in income, despite actually investing more work time into the channel. But I'm not going to bore you with that. So yeah, I'll just need to get that done. I'll order more gel so I can have enough to fill out the entire torso mold, and maybe set that up a little better with a backstop. Maybe I should also do a slow-mo recording of the different bows and crossbows in action, so that we can see how the limbs flex and how everything moves. Maybe I can even calculate how fast they move, things like that. So that should be interesting. But yeah, in this case, it was really, for entertainment more than anything else. It wasn't supposed to be scientific, as said. But it was still interesting. I mean, the way the modern crossbow bolts just completely buried themselves in there and, in fact, went all the way through everything. That was really impressive. That showed just how much more velocity they have. They're also, as I said, the bolts are pretty narrow and thin, especially compared to the medieval crossbow bolts. They are quite a bit thicker and have a thicker point and all of that. So that all makes a difference. The smaller the surface area is that you concentrate the force on, the better it's going to be, the more penetration you're going to get. Also, another difference that I've noticed, you'll see that more in another video that I'm going to upload soon, where I tested a bit of mail on top of a padded jacket. Now, in that case, the material behind it doesn't matter as much, so that's going to be a more accurate test, really. What that will show is the importance of the difference between momentum and kinetic energy. As in case of momentum, what matters is mass and speed equally. Now, this is a simplification. It's not really just that. It also depends on the time, for how long something pushes. But you can think of that as, for example, if you put your hand on somebody's chest and you push them like that, you may generate enough force to push them over and make them fall down, right? So that's a lot of momentum. It may be plenty of mass because you're essentially putting a lot of your body weight behind that. So there's plenty of mass. You can even lean with your entire body against that. So you have plenty of mass. You don't have a lot of speed because it's a slow push. There's plenty of momentum. You're not going to push into somebody's chest or anything like that, really. Kinetic energy, on the other hand, is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So velocity factors in at a much higher rate than mass does. So if you have something like a bullet, which is really small mass, but it travels at extremely high speed, that ramps up the kinetic energy a lot, but it's very, very little momentum. So that's why people don't fly back when they're shot at the way the movies would have you believe. If you have especially something like a relatively small bullet, 9mm, passing through a body at a very high velocity, there's not going to be any shove, really. The body's not going to be pushed back, but it just drives right through because it's so much kinetic energy, also concentrated on a small surface area. Surface area, of course, is important. In case of bolts and arrows, the surface area is always going to be relatively small because it's always going to be a point, but some points have more surface area than others. Either way, so in case of the medieval crossbow, you can tell that there is a fairly decent amount of momentum, but not as much kinetic energy. So that's also why with the test I did previously with just the padded jacket, that one bounced off the padding because it's got fairly decent momentum, but not enough kinetic energy, especially not enough velocity to really drive into the fibers before they can compress and bounce back, really. So that's the short and simplified version. I'm not a physicist, but that's just what I know so far. So yeah, as I said, this was mainly a trial run. There will be more, and it should become more and more interesting over time as I get more practice in setting things up and tweaking everything and so on and so forth. Anyway, thanks for watching.